Warning: this chapter deals with substance use and addiction to stimulants and other substances I leaned on to hold myself together. I've written it honestly about what it did to me, not as a guide to how. Please take care of yourself here and know you're not alone. If you need a person to talk to, reach out to me on Instagram at Benchumiller, BenChumiller.
Today is Tuesday, July 28th, 2026, and I am here with Benjamin, and we are going to talk about the months leading up to his first medical leave from Northwestern.
Chapter 8, Two Halves, January 2nd or 3rd, 2021. My middle brother Sam and I were driving back to Chicago, 16 hours from Houston. He took the first 4. I took over outside of Texarkana and drove the whole way through Arkansas. He took over right before Memphis and drove up into Illinois. I took back over until Champaign. He drove the last hour or two from Champaign to Evanston. By the end of each 4-hour stretch, my legs were numb. My body was numb. We were moving fast enough that whoever wasn't driving was co-piloting, watching the road ahead for cops, for hazards, for anything that might force us to slow down. When I was driving, he did the same for me. We traded the wheel and traded the watch and kept moving north towards Evanston. Somewhere in those 16 hours, whenever I wasn't behind the wheel, I was thinking about what was waiting in Evanston. The party boy identity was 9 months in the past. He didn't survive the COVID lockdown. Something else was going to take his place when we got back to Evanston in a few more hours. The mask wasn't new. It was the one the pre-stroke version of Benjamin had worn through middle school and into high school. The kid who pulled almost perfect grades. We were just trying it on again for the first time in years. From Champaign into the south side of Chicago, we hit a winter storm. Visibility dropped to 20 feet in front of the car. We didn't slow down. I had the map on my phone in my hand and called the turns. Slight bend left, slight bend right, straight ahead, slight bend left. He drove by my voice. That's how we arrived into the south side of Chicago. We pulled into Evanston late that night. The next day we got to the apartment. I was moving in with Sam and his former roommate Trey. The 3 of us in a single apartment for the winter quarter. The room I was moving into was already full when I walked in. A football player had been staying there the quarter before, and his stuff was still everywhere. Clothes, bags, things he hadn't taken with him when he left. I spent that first day gathering all of it into trash bags and dragging them out into the living room. The apartment was a typical Chicago place, 2 doors, a front door off the building's main stairwell, a back door leading to the back steps. The back door opened straight into the kitchen, and my room was right off the kitchen. The first room anyone walked into through the back. The last room anyone would notice was occupied if you came in through the front. Sam and Trey's rooms was down a hallway from the living room on the other side of the apartment. I'm particular about my space. Whenever I move somewhere, I make it mine immediately. I cleaned it, organized it, set it up the way I needed it. By the end of that first night, the room had stopped being his and had become mine. The room I just made was about to become my prison. The first week or 2 of school, around the middle of January, I tried Adderall from one of my friends. I took it in my apartment one morning, sat down at my desk in my room, the room I had just made mine, and felt the chemistry move into my body. And then a sentence arrived in my head that I hadn't been able to say out loud in over 4 years. I feel like my old self. My focus lasered in, the noise in my head, the question, the pit, the running cycle of what to worry about next, what was still wrong with the body. All of it quieted, the mind sharpened to a single point, the mind focused the way minds were supposed to focus. I sat there repeating to myself, and I feel like my old self. That pill wasn't the last one, but one of the first. By the next week, I was getting them daily. The friend I'd gotten the first one from had a prescription, and what had started as a one-time experiment quickly became the new structure of my days. Because the focus wasn't the only thing Adderall gave me, the pill also killed my appetite, and killing my appetite meant the post-stroke version of me, the one who cared about how he looked, the one who had been counting calories and fasting and cutting weight for 2 years, could keep being himself. And the pre-stroke version of me, the one who performed in the classroom and was perfect, could finally come back. For the first time since the stroke, the two halves that had been at war inside myself were making peace with each other. A temporary peace. A day on Adderall looked like this: 5 a.m. out of bed, 3 to 400 milligrams of caffeine in pre-workout downed at the kitchen counter, walk to the gym in the Chicago winter, lakefront wind cold, that specific Midwestern dark that's still dark at 6 in the morning, lift, whatever was scheduled for that day, walk back home, shower, change, get ready for the day. Right before walking out the back door, I'd take the first Adderall of the day, down the back steps, out into the morning, stop for a large black coffee on the way, then to wherever I was working that day, a co-working space at my friend's apartment or the Northwestern Maine Library or wherever class was meeting that day. Start working around 8, hold the focus through noon, 15-20-minute break, then work again from 12:30 until 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Another coffee in there somewhere. The focus held the whole time. The pit was quiet, the body running on only caffeine and Adderall. No food yet. Walk back to the apartment, the first and only meal of the day. All of it eaten in a single 1-hour window in the late afternoon. Every calorie tracked, everything weighed on a scale, logged, exact. I told myself I was just doing intermittent fasting, that I was still getting what I needed, just in a restricted window. But the extremist in me had taken intermittent fasting and stretched it past what a body could hold. A full day of fasting, every day, day in and day out. If I was going out that night to socialize, half an Adderall to keep going, and then go out and drink with Adderall in my system. If I was staying home at night, I would smoke marijuana to come down off the Adderall. That was the day, every day. Repeat. A day without Adderall looked like this. The pill wasn't available, my friend's prescription was out, or he didn't have any extra to give me that morning. I couldn't get out of bed. No 5 a.m. workout, no pre-workout, no coffee, no classwork done, no library, no focus, no structure. I lay in my bed all day in a numb state, just needing to feel something, to put anything into the empty space inside me that would make me feel something good or bad. Then the only thing I had access to was the binge. Once I gave into it, I'd put my winter coat on, walk out the back door, down the back steps, to the grocery store, Jewel Osco, 2 blocks away. The walk there, through the aisles and back, was unconscious. Something else had taken control of my body and my mind, and I had to let it run its course. There was no routine in what I bought, different every time, depending on what looked pleasurable that day. Walk back to my apartment, sit down in the room I'd made mine, and binge. That was the new structure. The structure on the days the Adderall wasn't there. The pit had been quiet on the Adderall days. On the days without it, the pit consumed my whole being. This was the rhythm of the winter quarter. Adderall days, days without Adderall, productive days, days in bed, 24-hour fasts, binges that consumed the entire afternoon. The two halves of Benjamin alternated, depending on what I had available to consume that day. From the middle of January through the end of March, that was the pattern. 10 weeks, one body, 2 completely different versions of a day, sorted by whether or not a single pill was available. but there were enough Adderall days, enough productive days, enough to put me on the dean's list by the end of the quarter. Externally, the pre-stroke version of Benjamin had never left. The mask was working. The grade said so. The stroke hadn't slowed me down. Dean's list. When I saw the email confirming it, I felt the same hollowness I'd felt under every mask I'd worn up to that point. Same hollow feeling, now a different costume. But internally we knew, this wasn't sustainable. As the spring quarter started in April, I got my own prescription. The supply uncertainty was gone. No more friends running out, no more days in bed waiting for a pill that wasn't coming. I had the bottle now. I had the refills. The engine that had run on borrowed chemistry all winter was now running on chemistry that was mine. Adderall every day. No more no Adderall days. The pre-stroke version of Benjamin had a permanent supply, but the body started telling me something the mind hadn't caught up with yet. In the evenings, after the Adderall wore off, my brain didn't feel like it was just tired. It felt like I'd placed my brain on a frying pan, like I'd put my brain over a fire all day, and what was left at the end was a burnt egg I had to peel off. That's what Adderall felt like by the end of every day. The damage on the inside that the focus on the outside had been built on. The nights when it wore off, I was smoking marijuana to try to come down. As April went on, the amount climbed. The marijuana wasn't recreation anymore. It became my escape route, my way down off the chemistry that had run the day. And even with the marijuana, I couldn't sleep. My brain was squirming. Some nights it felt like it was in pain. The kind of pain that doesn't go anywhere, doesn't have a position to relieve, just sits inside the skull from the damage I'd done to it that day. It wasn't one moment. It was the cumulative weight of weeks. The mornings on Adderall were getting harder to hold. The nights off it were getting harder to survive. My body knew before my mind did, long before. My body knew I wasn't going to make it to the end of the spring quarter in June if I stayed on this path. The mind didn't want to believe it yet, but it was running out of room not to. But externally, none of it was visible. I was still at the gym, still in the library, still socializing, still making the dean's list the mask was holding. To anyone watching, I was the guy who came back from a stroke and was doing better than anyone had a right to expect. So, when I arrived at my friend's apartment on a Friday night in early May, nothing in my appearance gave a hint at what the body and mind underneath were carrying. By the time I walked through the back door of his apartment, I'd already taken another half or full Adderall instant release to keep going through the night. The plan was to drink on top of it. That was the chemistry holding me upright when I stepped inside. We started playing beer pong, a normal Friday night for a normal sophomore in college, and that was the surface. We played a couple of games. The alcohol was flowing. One of my friends on the golf team started complaining about his coach, about his classes, about his playing time, about the schedule the athletic department was holding him to. The complaints came easy. The room was the right space for them. I thought it was an invitation. I started to voice some of my own, how exhausted I was every day, how much I was putting myself through to keep the mask in place. He shut me down before I'd finished. What do you have to worry about? You're on the dean's list. You're in the gym every day. You're not an athlete. You don't have anything to worry about. The moment he finished the sentence, the pit in my stomach opened back up, fully, right there in the apartment with cups still on the table. And in the same second, I saw something I hadn't seen until that moment. The four of us were in the same room, same Friday night, same campus, but we were living in completely different realities. And that weekend, after the night at my friend's apartment, I made the calls and I called my parents. Not about that specific moment in my friend's apartment. I didn't tell them about that. But I told them how I actually was underneath the dean's list, underneath the mask I was wearing. The toll the Adderall, the caffeine, the SARMs were taking on me at this point. Then I called my academic counselor and I told her I was thinking about going on a medical leave of absence, an MLOA, time off from Northwestern. The conversations were short. The decision was already made by the time I had decided to make the call. The moment inside my friend's apartment was the confirmation my mind needed of what my body had been telling it for the past month. The only thing I was thinking about was what Benjamin needed, not what my family expected, not what my friends expected, not what Northwestern expected, not what the Dean's List version of me expected. What did Benjamin need? Because I'd been living for everyone else up to this point, and for the first time in a long time, maybe the first time since the stroke, I was about to make a decision based on him. Mid-May, a week after the night at my friend's apartment, I flew back to Houston on my first medical leave from school. The next 2 to 3 weeks were the detox. I spent most of those days asleep on the couch, 12 hours, 14, 16, 18. The body that had been running on Adderall every day since January, 4 months of it, was finally allowed to stop running, and the second it was allowed to stop, it collapsed. Zombified, that's the word for what I was. Awake without being awake, asleep without recovering. The sleep was heavy. I'd wake up, not knowing what day it was, not knowing what time it was, then I'd go back under. The hours on the couch didn't add up to a schedule, they just added up to time the body was using to get through what I had put it through. The waking hours I wasn't asleep, I spent sprawled out on the couch watching Netflix. That was all the energy I had. 4 months of placing my brain on a frying pan from the beginning of January to the middle of May had left no room for anything else. I remember going to the gym a couple of times during those weeks, 2 or 3 in the morning. The only hours I could move, I'd lift for a little while in an empty gym and then go back to the couch. That was how I spent the end of May. By the beginning of June, Adderall was out of my system. What was left on the couch in Houston was just me, Benjamin,